but it begins to drop off fairly dramatically. So we think 50 feet is a reasonable target. We're trying to pick some simple numbers to sort of ingrain in people's minds that, you know, a 50-foot no-mow zone along the shore with a reasonable clearing for recreational purposes is what we're striving for. And we know that shoreline vegetation serves a lot of purposes, not just for buffering, for absorbing the non-point source, but also protecting against erosion. Habitat, of course, is another important one. So here's what it would be for new construction. You can see that that dashed yellow line towards the bottom, that's the shore impact zone, so that's the 50 feet buffer area, and then we would allow for like a 50-foot clearing within that zone for recreational use for a standard lot. So you can have some cleared area down by the shoreline, but we really are hoping that we can move into this with a new development as a new paradigm. And for the existing development, what we have said to the local governments is we're going to say no changes, but there is a change in that we're asking local governments to work on developing education, marketing, incentive programs that will help to educate the shoreline property owner and perhaps provide some incentives to get some of that buffer back into place. We'll see how that works. We're also requiring mitigation on some of the permits that you might get for certain shoreline activities, or if you apply for a variance and say you don't have a lot of good shoreline vegetation, maybe there would be a requirement to restore some of that as a condition of the variance. And like I said, it applies to agriculture too. So we have the same 50-foot buffer there as well. A little bit on subdivisions. Lot block subdivisions, the standard practice since the 40s, still pretty much the standard practice. We don't think it's a good idea, especially on our lakes. The original shoreline rules and even the rules we have now, we thought that, well, if we go to bigger lots, that's better, right? Because then we've reduced the density. But bigger lots mean bigger houses, bigger lawns, bigger roads, more impermeable surfaces, and we haven't really gained anything. Here's some pretty intensive development that's got some green areas associated with it. This is an extreme, of course, Central Park in New York City. But this is a general concept of what we have in mind with conservation developments, which is what we really would like to see happen over the next 20 years. We're just on the edge of that, I think. Here's a schematic from Randall Arndt. Incidentally, he's going to be giving a talk tomorrow at Minnetonka Community Center. The last page of my handout here has some information on that if you're interested in learning more. If you look at these two subdivisions, the dots, there's actually exactly the same number of lots on both, but you can see how much more open space there is on the conservation subdivision. And properly designed, I'll go back a little. A conservation subdivision, if you look at those, is my pointer working here? I'm not getting it. But properly designed, there is a sense in a conservation subdivision, not that you're crammed into a bunch of tiny lots, but you site your building in such a way that you're looking out over that open space, and if anything, the sense is more, that you have more open space, more property, more common open space than you have in these private lots on the left. So we think it's a really good thing, and it certainly is a good thing for the lake. Here's an example of an existing subdivision on a recreational development lake, roughly 20 lots. You just cookie cutter them in, and it doesn't matter what's there. If there's a wetland or whatever, you just kind of, it's part of your lot, fill it in. You know, get a permit to do that first. But But the same lot with a conservation subdivision, you can see the lots are more clustered, closer together. We're still allowing larger lots in the kind of in the first tier. You see that those might be premium lots, but there's plenty of open space and access to the water by the back lots as well, and you know, and then common mooring space for the boats too. So that's the model. That's what we're striving to achieve. Mitigation, I mentioned that basically there would be mitigation required as a condition for getting a variance or permits that increase structure, footprint area, other alteration permits, anything that's going to have the potential of causing an impact to the water, you know, should be mitigated, but appropriately and in proportion. So, you know, when I say mitigation, you know, restoring native vegetation, it might be leaving an area unmowed, or certainly not bringing in large mature trees and stuff. That'd be silly. We have resort standards that I won't get into here because I want to allow a little time for questions. So, yes?
Yeah, we're on a lake, and it's an association that includes probably about 70 lots on the actual public lake. And one of the debates that we've had over the years, and I think the answer is pretty clear, but the debate goes on, and the question is, who actually has a say over construction of docks on the lake?
Whoa.
And some people are asserting that, well, the DNR, that's their property, they're the ones that control docks and swim platforms and whatever else goes on the lake. Other people are saying, well, the association, because we're managing all the properties around the lake, has some say on what kind of dock can be constructed.
Well, kind of depends on the association, I guess, and what your bylaws and covenants and what are. I mean, in today's scheme of things, in the current rules, you might be living in a planning and development, and where you do have centralized docking, and maybe that is the responsibility of the association to maintain and stuff, because we've always encouraged that kind of centralized docking concept rather than having a whole bunch of docks strung out, and you can achieve that through a PUD or a conservation subdivision. But the more general question, who controls the docks? One of the other jobs I had when I was area hydrologist up in Duluth was issuing waters permits. And at that time, if it was a permanent dock, you needed a permit. If it was a seasonal dock, you didn't. Back in the early 90s, we deregulated docks so that most docks did not require a permit if they were not wider than 8 feet, which seemed reasonable. But especially in the Brainerd area in the last few years, there's been a kind of an explosion of larger docks and people putting docks out and then big platforms on the end of the docks. And I'm hoping I'm not describing your dock, but some even go to the extreme of putting in hot tubs and picnic tables, and we even have pictures of people that have put potted trees out on the ends of their platform docks, and I don't think that's what we had in mind when we were thinking of buffer strips. So, so the DNR has been involved in a parallel rule-making effort to try to get a handle on docks, and they're just in the process. Even as we're working on these shoreland rules, there's another crew that's working on dock rules that is going to try to set some more clear standards. We have there are some pieces in the shoreland rules that deal with docks as far as on a PUD that you're only allowed so many docks per number of riparian units, that sort of thing. And if there's properties back from the shore, they really don't. They can have access to the water. They can have a transitional dock, they can use and stuff, but they don't have permanent mooring. We've taken those out of our shoreland rules, and we put them into the dock rules. The rationale being that why not keep all the dock stuff in one basket? So that will be part of the DNR's dock rules now, and it won't be the burden on the local government. They can just say, well, go see the DNR. Yeah.
So I guess, well, I get the impression that the DNR, it's a public body of water. You guys make the rules on dock construction and so forth. Private landowners, even though they have lakeshore property and associations that they belong to, really don't